Hello, my name is Mark Gibson, and you're listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, a weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming.
So a very good morning, and you're welcome to today's Signpost webinar. We hope you're keeping safe and well wherever you're joining us from today. Today we'll be discussing the National Agricultural Inspection Programme, which is the framework used by the Environmental Protection Agency for coordinating how local authorities inspect farms under the Nitrates Action Programme. So the National Agricultural Inspection Programme directs inspections towards catchments under the greatest pressures, but using a risk-based approach. And today we're joined by Michael Martin, who is a Senior Inspector from the Environmental Protection Agency, to explain how it works and what it means on the ground. Michael, you're very welcome to today's webinar.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you very much. And it's good to be here, and thank you for the invite.
Great. So you're joining us from Wexford this morning, Michael. Maybe you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing down there in the EPA.
Yeah, that's right. I'm down here in South County Wexford, a native of this part of the world. And I'm 12 years in the EPA, and during that time I've been involved in industrial licensing, wastewater, and I've also done some work in the enforcement of wastewater treatment plants, and now I'm a lead inspector on the National Agricultural Inspections Programme.
Excellent. So you're going to give us an understanding, I suppose, of the mechanics of how that works at a national level, and it's fair to say that it's really the local authorities that are deciding, you know, where the inspections take place on the ground. You operate more at a sub-catchment level, or identifying where those riskier areas are.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's the local authorities that carry out the inspections. The EPA's role is an oversight role over the local authorities in carrying out their environmental functions, which are varied and many. And agricultural inspections is one of them. And our team has the oversight responsibility there.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you're going to go through that in more detail in your presentation. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to taking questions after there. So I'm going to hand over to you and look forward to our discussion afterwards.
Okay. So this morning, I'll just give a bit of a background, I suppose, as to how we got here with the NAIP, or the National Agricultural Inspections Programme. And also then I'll just go into a little bit of the rationale and the mechanics of the program, and then at the end there I'll give a summary of a recent report and the findings of that report. They were based on the inspections that were undertaken in 2025. So we'll just move on from here. So I suppose three main areas that hinge the water quality focus for us here in the NAIP is the Water Framework Directive. So you have there's an obligation there, of course, that under the Water Framework Directive, that all waters here in Ireland should be at good status by 2027. Now, agriculture has a significant role to play, as does other sectors such as forestry, wastewater treatment, etc. And then, in addition to that, the review of the 5th Nitrates Action Programme highlighted a need for improved compliance and strengthened focus on enforcement. And more recent, the Water Action Plan 2024, local authorities, again, were to strengthen inspections and enforcement action. Back in 2022, the EPA were assigned an enhanced enforcement role in relation to the oversight of the local authority agricultural inspections. And we were given some responsibilities in that. So really was the main one, I suppose, to sum it up, would be to develop, implement and oversee a local authority national inspections programme. So the programme itself then includes the development and delivery of a risk-based national agriculture inspection plan. It's risk-based in that the inspections are undertaken in areas where water bodies are significantly impacted by agricultural activities. So inspections don't take place necessarily all, on every water body. Not all farms are inspected. And it's the farms that are in these areas that are likely to be selected for inspection. We also then produce guidance and tools to assist in selecting the farms and carrying out inspections. That would include things like maps, which we provide on our website. I'll mention a little bit more about those later on. And we provide guidance to the local authorities. We have a guidance manual which the local authorities use. Again, it is a guidance, and the local authorities can, of course, supplement that with their own knowledge and expertise as well, which many of them have gained over several years of carrying out inspections, farm inspections, that is. So we issue that guidance and provide a training program for the local authorities. Also, every year now, we run a training program which incorporates a classroom element and then also an on-farm training element as well. And that's rolled out for local authority inspectors who are involved in inspecting the farms. We also established and we chair the National Agriculture Inspections Programme Working Group. This is a vital piece of the jigsaw in this whole programme. Its members include the EPA NAIP team, of course, that's ourselves, the EPA catchments team, who are give the expertise in water quality, the Department of Housing, who have when it comes to water, it's the Department of Housing that have the oversight there. We have members from 3 sections of the Department of Agriculture, and also from Inland Fisheries, and from the River Basin Management Service, previously known as LawPro, and also from the CCMA, who are, I suppose, an overbody of the local authorities. And very importantly, of course, we have 6 local authorities on the group as well, and they're Cork, Limerick, Monaghan, Wexford, Galway County, and Meath. And that group has worked tirelessly since 2022 to bring this program together, and I suppose it's got us to where we are now. So it has been a very successful group. So we were also then to direct local authorities where they fail to meet the objectives of the NAIP. So this is our oversight role. The NAIP is part of the Office of Environmental Enforcement within the EPA. And that's our main responsibility is oversight over the local authorities. So we direct them where they fail to meet the objectives of that NAIP as well. And we have an obligation to report to the Minister every 4 years on the progress of the programme. And also, we make recommendations to prevent and reduce water pollution from agricultural sources. So if we look at the main pressures causing impacts on water quality, we can see that agriculture is still the most significant pressure out there. It's not the only one, but it's the most significant in pressure, impacting over 1,000 water bodies. And the other, I suppose, noticeable thing there as well, if you look at it there from 2015, 2018 to 2021, it's increasing. Okay, so as I say, that's notable in itself. And then we have the other pressures like the hydromorphological pressures. So that they would be like widening and straightening of rivers and so forth, and they are a problem as well. and forestry is in there. And then we have our urban wastewater treatment as well. So some of those are actually improving, and it's good to see that. So our aim, everyone's aim here, is to try and have agriculture going in that same direction, improving. So the enforcement element of it, which we are, is part of a compliance assurance system, really. So you'll see there, in addition to us, we also have collaboration and engagement going on. So we have like the RBMS, as I say, previously known as LawPro. We've Teagasc, we've the ASSA program, we've the local authorities themselves, the National Federation of Group Water Schemes, the EPA, the DAFM, the Department of Housing, and then there's voluntary schemes and projects, and also industry as well. So that's on the collaboration and engagement side. And then in the monitoring and sampling, we have the EPA and the local authorities, and we have farm inspections. Then we have the local authorities and DAFM, and that's where we fit in. And also then over on the enforcement side, which is when things are not as we'd like them to be, obviously. Their local authorities can issue warning letters. They can cross-report to DAFM, which may result in a reduction in support payments from them. There's also the possibility of being prosecuted, and these are all done under the GAP regulations. The Water Pollution Act is another act or instrument that's used as well. And they're mainly carried out by the local authorities, DAFM, Inland Fisheries, and the Environmental Protection Agency. So the plan itself then, the risk-based inspection plan, the Water Action Plan has set a target of 4,500 farms per annum to be inspected. That 4,500 farms is based on, I suppose, a risk-based assessment that there's approximately 45,000 farms in the areas that are significantly impacted by agriculture. So you can see by that it is a 10-year cycle. So again, I just want to reiterate that it's 4,500 farms per annum, but not every farm in Ireland gets inspected every year, and it's the 45,000 farms overall that are likely to receive an inspection during that 10 years. If a farm is found not to be non-compliant on the first inspection, it will receive a follow-up inspection and may receive a number of follow-up inspections until the issues are remediated and there's a successful outcome. So the risk-based inspection program is, as I say there, is in water bodies at risk with agriculture identified as the significant pressure. The local authorities carry out the inspections. The EPA then has allotted inspection numbers to each local authority. So out of the 4,500 farms, we just allocate the number of farms to be inspected to each local authority. And that's, again, based on this risk-based program. The areas and the farms that are inspected, they're chosen by the local authorities. They're not chosen by the EPA. The local authorities have discretion on where they go there, but it is based on, in part, guidance and maps that are issued by the by the EPA. So one of those in particular would be the Farm and Landscape Measures Map. Some of you may have seen it before. It was called the Target Agriculture Measures Map. It had to be renamed, or it was thought to be better to rename it, because again, many of you will recognize that the acronym for Target Agriculture Measures Map is TAM, and it was liable to be confused in some ways with the TAM's grant system. We also then provide pollution impact potential maps, and all of those maps are not only available to the local authorities and to your advisors, they're also available to farmers and the general public. And probably the best way, if you want to have a look at them, the best way to access them would be to use maybe Google and just put in EPA maps and put in flag map or PIP maps or something like that. And I'm sure it will take you to the location on our website where they can be viewed. And at that point, then it's just a matter of putting in your air code, and you'll be able to see how the water bodies in your area are currently, what status they are currently assessed at. So, just to dive a little bit deeper into the EPA tools or into the EPA maps, that the flag map has three colors in particular for areas that are under pressure from the from agricultural activities or from pollution from agricultural activities. And where you see a navy color, it's water bodies that require measures to reduce phosphorus or sediment and chemical loss. And red flags are to reduce ammonia losses and potential impacts from point sources. And the orange flag then is to reduce measures, to implement measures to reduce nitrogen losses. And you'll also notice here on this slide that when it comes to phosphorus and sediment, that the way to, one of the ways to, I suppose, help fix that problem is to break the pathway. Okay, so that's to stop it from getting into the water. Whereas with the ammonium is to target the farmyard. So like silage pits in particular would be a contributor to ammonium if there's discharges coming out from your silage pit and it's getting into drainage ditches or getting into small streams or rivers. And the measures then to reduce nitrogen losses will be to control the loss at the source. And also on that map, if you do look at it, there's many areas that are in white, and they're areas that may be at risk from other pressures. And the key point here is to get the right measure in the right place. So the program itself then needed to build capacity within the local authorities in particular, and that was by providing, from our perspective, by providing the guidance and the support and help to get up and running and to increase the number of inspections that were taking place. So the NAIP working group, as I mentioned before, was key to that, and it brings a consistency of approach. Then the guidance tools for selecting farms, again, are very useful. And it just means that the risky, or the areas at risk, are the ones that are highlighted. Then we provide the templates and guidance for carrying out and recording farm inspections. So, when the local authority inspector is out on your farm, they do have to record what they found. And they do report that back into us on a quarterly basis in a summary form. So we don't get all the details at all now of what was found on the farm. We don't ask for quarterly submissions of their inspection forms or anything like that. It's a summary form of what they found. Then the methodology for the follow-up and closure of issues detected, it's in place and it's constantly being developed. And also, as I mentioned there earlier, there's a certified training program in place, takes place annually there now. And also we provide on-site webinars, case study workshops, and the inspection manual itself, the guidance manual. And additional to that, and key to this whole building of capacity, the Department of Housing sanctioned the recruitment of 57 new local authority inspectors. Prior to that, for the whole of Ireland, there was about 11 full-time equivalent inspectors throughout Ireland carrying out these inspections. There's now about 67 inspectors, give or take, movements and so forth, but it's 67 inspectors now, so significant increase there. So where has the gap inspections numbers, where has it come from and where is it going to? So if you see back in 2008 there was over 4,000, almost 4,500, I suppose, inspections being done. And since then, all the way up to 2022 thereabouts, you can see that the inspection numbers had fallen off dramatically. And this was largely due to challenges and pressures, I suppose, that were out there, especially on resources for carrying out these inspections for local authorities. And the NAIP inspection program and the allocation of the new resources has seen a very big increase in the number of inspections being carried out. Now, the targeted number of initial gap inspections allocated to each local authority is based on the number of water bodies at risk. So you can, I suppose you can't take all this in, but just to show you what the methodology is there with it, each local authority area has the number of water bodies there beside it that are at risk. And then over the years from 2023, 2024, 2025, you'll see that the number of inspections was ramped up. And it was ramped up to give local authorities the opportunity to build up their staffing levels and the resources, and also, I suppose, to get the information out there as well to the farming community, to the advisors, that this program was in place and it was ramping up, and that inspections were likely to happen in certain areas. So we're currently at 4,500 target, and I'll just show you in a later slide how that has played out for 2025. So what is covered then on a gap farm inspection? Well, these are some of the main topics that they look for. So they're checking for compliance with the gap regulations, and also to ensure that there's no breach of the Water Pollution Act. So that's problems within the water itself, of course. So they'll be checking for things like adequacy of slurry and soil water storage, the management of rainwater, evidence of discharges from the farmyard. So those discharges could be pipes coming out of your farmyard, into a drainage ditch, for instance, or maybe directly into a stream or into a river. And if those pipes are coming from dirty yards, that is certainly a problem. Then they'll also be checking for the management of silage effluent, runoff from silos, etc. So again, things to watch out there for the farmer to watch out for would be, if there's diversion valves or anything like that on your silage pits, to make sure that they're being managed properly. Impacts on the nearest water course, they'll be checking for that. And management of slurry spreading. So again, they'll be checking that slurry is not being spread during the closed periods, that slurry is not being spread during adverse weather conditions, and that buffer distances are being observed. And in particular, local authorities tend to tend to get complaints in with regard to this from the public, and they do respond to those and respond to them quite quickly. So the couple of other items there then is the management of farmyard manure. So again, just to make sure it's not being stored out on fields too close to water bodies as well, it would be one particular thing that they'd be looking for. And also impacts from farm roadways. So, where your animals are coming into your farmyard, say in particular from land, just to see that there isn't runoff from there into, again, at that point probably would be into drainage ditches. But these drainage ditches are very important because they're the conduit down to maybe a smaller stream and then down into the larger water course. And that's where a lot of the problems are manifesting themselves. So during the farm inspection then, the inspector, as I say, we'll check in, is the farmer minimizing soil water and how is it collected? How are silage bales stored? Are they stored away from water courses? How is silage effluent managed? Measures and checks if all manure slurry storage facilities are fit for purpose. How is farmyard manure stored and managed? And is there evidence of direct or indirect discharges of livestock manures to waters? And then the land spreading and the buffer zones for chemical and organic fertilizers. Runoff of nutrients and sediment from farmyard and farmlands, they can be a risk to human health as well as to the environment through contamination of drinking water wells and or abstraction sources. So excess nutrients such as nitrate and phosphate entering our waters, they cause increased growth of plants and algae, affecting the fish and insects, and that biodiversity and is very, very important for the health of the water and the environment adjoining the water areas as well. So that it is very important that they are not being impacted and are not being killed by excess plant growth. So here's the summary of the 2025 report. Last year we had 4,315 initial gap inspections carried out. That was 96% of the 4,500 target. The inspections were up 66% in 2024 or in 2025 versus the 2024 number. And that's a 4-time increase since the NAIP program launched 3 years ago. The rate of non-compliance of those inspections was 43%, which is quite high. 1,280 follow-up gap inspections were carried out. That was double the previous year. And I suppose a good thing to note here that of those follow-up inspections, 48% were found to be, the issues there were found to be resolved during the re-inspection. The Department of Agriculture carried out 631 inspections on behalf of local authorities. So this is in addition to the department's own conditionality inspections. They carry out a number of inspections on behalf of the local authorities, and in 2025 that was 631. The top 3 main categories for non-compliance were poor control of soil water, discharges with potential to impact water quality, and poor management of farmyard manure. So just to, again, dive into the report a little bit more, 22 of the 28 local authorities met the 2025 targets, and that's a big increase compared with 2024, when only 8 local authorities met those targets. The 6 local authorities that did not meet the inspection targets were Cork, Donegal, Leitrim, Mayo, Waterford and Wicklow. Some of them were very, very close. The top 3 specific issues within those categories would be runoff from farmyard manure not controlled. There was 856 cases detected. Missing and broken gutters and downpipes, 535 cases. And clean water not properly segregated, 517 cases. Comparison of the main reasons for non-compliance. So this is the comparison from 2024 to 2025. Control of soil water, you see, is pretty much the same. There's very little change. And again, in the farmyard manure, and it's kind of a running trend at the moment that the top 3 have remained the same and are of I suppose, a significant importance. And slurry collection and storage is in there, and other issues with potential to impact water quality. Now, I just want to say at this point in time that some of these issues may seem to be not significant, and it is fair to say that some of them are not as significant as others. However, those non-significant issues are seldom found in isolation. They're would most likely be other non-compliances found as well at the same time when the inspection is being done. So even though something like gutters and downpipes might be top of the list, they would, as I say, be found. They would be found in combination with other non-compliances during the inspection, which may be more serious. Gutters and downpipes, while they themselves may not seem to be significant, they can lead to more significant problems. So if you have water coming down from roofs and running out over dirty yards and down again into the drainage ditches or down into gullies and out into streams, eventually out into streams or rivers, then that in itself is a far bigger problem than just the actual gutters and downpipes needing to be replaced. They also can add problems for the farmer in his soiled water or his slurry storage capacity. If water's coming off roofs, it's not being properly directed away and is entering tanks, and it's prematurely filling those tanks. So again, top specific issues for non-compliance. So just to run down through, I suppose, more of them, just to give you a flavour of what's been found out there. We have the inadequate gutters and downpipes, the clean water not properly segregated, soiled water running into drainage ditches, inadequate management of silage pits, the storage of silage bales near a water course, silage effluent discharging to groundwater, runoff from farmyard manure not controlled, which is quite a large number, field storage of farmyard manure during the close season, farmyard manure stored too close to a water body, inadequate storage capacity for slurry, and inadequate management of slurry storage. And I suppose if you look at those, you'll see many of those can be prevented. You know, they are something that just maybe by moving farmyard manure, moving bales, you can actually ensure that during the day of the inspection that, they won't be a problem. Types of corrective actions then requested by the local authorities, just a couple of the top ones there. So there's a need to provide control measures for the farmyard runoff, of course, repair and replace the gutters and downpipes, divert soil water, control silage effluent or divert to suitable storage, and as I've just mentioned, move farmyard manure storage to a suitable location. The thing about all of these is it's prevention is better than the cure. So what I'd be saying here is for not to wait for an inspection to take place. You know, a stitch in time saves nine, as the old adage was. So it's to get out there, and I'm sure you will always be out there on your farm anyway. You know, farmers know their farm, they know their farmlands far better than anyone else. So they know the layout of the farm and they know what's happening on their farm. So if you take these things into account, and if you can prevent these being an issue, both for water quality and for an inspection, should it arise, then you know your day of inspection will go quite quickly, and you won't have problems arising out of it. So as I say, prevention is better than cure here for most of these things. So the enforcement actions then, a total of 2,935 enforcement actions were undertaken in 2025. Now, the biggest number of those were compliance letters, and they remain the primary enforcement tool. A compliance letter will outline what needs to be done and will give a time period in which to do it. And it's important then that those fixes are actually carried out within that time period and before the local authority inspector comes back to do a re-inspection. Now, the number of cross reports to the Department of Ag, they increased from 149 to 199 farms, but the proportion decreased from 8.5% down to 6.8% in 2025. There were section notices issued under the GAP regulations, and they more than doubled from 75 to 203. And then there's the Section 12 notices issued under the Water Pollution Act, and they dropped slightly from 55 to 48. But you'll notice, as I say, that the section notice issued under the GAP regulations more than doubled. And there were also then 5 prosecutions taken by local authorities. So the key messages there from the NAIP summary report: significant increase in farm inspection activity nationwide. The local authorities must sustain the increased level of farm inspections achieved in 2025. The local authority inspection shortfalls must be made up in 2026. 4 in 10 farms failed inspections in 2025. It's unacceptably high, and it does include a number of not as significant non-compliances, but I say these are usually in combination with other issues that are significant. Local authorities should increase follow-up inspections then to close out outstanding cases. And what we're calling for here in 2026 as well is an increase in cross-reporting to the Department of Ag and the use of prosecutions where necessary to restore compliance. Now, the aim of this increase is to help bring about better compliance and a broader awareness of likely enforcement action being applied for poor farming practices or management which fail to protect water quality. And again, I just say here, if prevention is better than the cure. So if you get out there in advance of any inspection and have a look and see, is there any issues on your farm that could be causing a problem for water quality? That's key here. And it's also, this increase is to provide a level of fairness for the many farmers who do utilize good practices and management on their farms. So that has to be acknowledged also, that many farmers out there are doing these things already. And, it's the fairness there, that they are doing it, and for others who are not doing it, that there is a kickback, against that. If you're not doing it, that there are repercussions for it. Then the local authorities and advisory services and industry stakeholders must continue to focus on improving water quality through compliance promotion and awareness activities to support farmers in meeting the regulatory obligations. So again, there is a need to support farmers in their endeavours to implement measures to improve the water quality, and that should come from the advisory services, the industry stakeholders in particular, and also the local authorities do have awareness campaigns and so forth out there which will help that. And then there's other supports out there from the RBMS administer the Farming for Water EIP, for instance, which is available to some farmers in some areas. And in some areas, the ASIP advisors are out there, and that's a free and confidential service for farmers. And then Teagasc themselves have the Better Farming for Water Quality campaign, and that outlines actions for change and provides good advice for farmers as well. So the final slide here, you'll be happy to hear. What will the NAIP bring? Okay, what we see the outcomes of the NAIP achieving, I suppose, is improved compliance with the GAP regs and nitrates action program, and a consistency of approach regarding inspections. And that's good for all. That's good for the local authorities that's carrying out the inspections, and it's good for the farmers as well, that there is a consistency of approach and that it's applied level-handed across the whole country, and then that there's an effective risk-based inspection and enforcement, more data on the level of compliance issues and follow-up actions, and that data will feed into other projects where consideration will be given to how effective the NAIP has been on any improvements in water quality. So that data is important from that perspective as well. Then more information on measures implemented and effectiveness of measures, and a greater awareness of water quality issues. And hopefully at the end of the day, what we'll see is an improvement in water quality. So thanks for listening, and I'll hand it back to you there, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Really, really excellent presentation, and you went through a lot of detail there. So I'm sure there are lots of questions coming through already. So please do use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen if you want to put a question directly to Michael this morning. Just, I suppose, going through your presentation, Michael, there you talked about the various different pressures affecting water quality, and it's a question that comes up regularly. And how does the EPA distinguish between those different pressures, agriculture versus the one-off treatment plants or forestry and so forth? Just be interested to understand that.
Yeah, well, look, I have just because there's quite a lot of numbers here, but the EPA monitors over 2,400 rivers, 220 lakes, 80 transitional water bodies, 45 coastal waters, 16 canals, 121 groundwater bodies. And the results from all that monitoring, along with the EPA's activity on the ground, they're out in the rivers and the streams and out, checking, ground truthing this information, if you want to call it that. And they also take into consideration the soil types and what farms may be in that area, or what, not just farms, they're looking to see, well, is there industry in that area? Is there commercial activity in that area? And they'll also check to see what the land use is in that area. So from all that information, they're able to discern what the significant impact is. And it may not be the only impact. So if agriculture is the significant impact, it's the big one. It's the biggest land use in that particular area. It may not be the only one, but it's not. And again, when we try to tackle these problems, it's not one only. It's all of them have to be tackled. So we have to deal with each one, on its own merits, really.
A number of advisors, I suppose, talking here about the maybe lack of consistency that's there still amongst different local authorities, that what's acceptable in one part of the country may not be acceptable in another. And I appreciate you have guidance and training programs to try and standardize that across the country. Is there anything else that can be done there? Or how is that level of, I suppose, our mixed interpretation of the rules there? How can that be addressed further?
Well, we'll continue to do the training, and we, and hold the workshops, but also sometimes what might be perceived as inconsistency can be more of practicalities as well, and it can be based, on what's on the ground within the region. Like, different regions of Ireland have different problems when it comes to water quality, different soil types and things like that. So, there is discretion there with the local authority inspectors to, I suppose, apply practical approaches as well. So, but certainly we will continue to issue the guidance and the training and continue to bring about more consistency in this whole area. Yeah.
You mentioned the different flags for the different types of pressures there, and you also mentioned a white flag. I'm just interested to know what you describe it as other pressures. What does that include?
Well, you may have industrial pressures, or so you might have industry in the area. You might have wastewater treatment plants. You might have septic tanks. So they might be an issue. But the flag map is specifically to aid agriculture. So to add everything in there would just, I suppose, compound. It'd be just a mishmash of information. I don't think anyone will be able to get anything for it. So we just concentrate on the ag pressures, but the other areas may have other problems in them as well.
Okay, more practical question here. Coming from an advisor as to how they can best support their farmer clients to prepare for an upcoming inspection. What advice would you offer there?
I suppose would be if you know there's an inspection coming up, would be to have a look around the farm and to see where there might be likely problems, and to try and get those fixed before the inspection happens. Also, perhaps just refer to the guidance book that's out there that the local authority inspectors use, so that'll give a good idea of what's going to be inspected on the day. But really what you're trying to do is make sure that water quality is not being impacted by activities on that farm. So it's to have a look around and just to see what's going on, what's going on in the farmyard and down in the farmland as well. And I think that's probably the best way that they can help them to prepare for it. Now they may need some documentation available to them as well. For the local authority inspector, they may want to check records. So perhaps just to make sure that they have, if they can assist them and help them in any way, to have those records available on the day as well, to have them there as well for them.
And is that asked for when they get a notice of inspection, and how much notice do they get? Do farmers get for inspection, or does that vary?
It's well, in general, they'll get a 48-hour notice for a planned inspection. If it's an inspection that has come about due to a complaint or an incident, there may be no notice. Okay, so an inspector may arrive if that's the case. But for a planned NAIP inspection, we call it there, they'll get the 48-hour notice and to say that they're on the way. So it's a courtesy thing really, and it helps everyone. It helps the local authority inspector as well, because they know that there'll be someone there on the day probably, and that they will have whatever is needed for them to be able to carry out the inspection. It helps the farmer, of course, that someone hasn't just turned up in a yellow jacket that they don't know is going to arrive on their farm. So it's, as I say, it is a courtesy element there that has been introduced as part of all this guidance.
A number of questions coming in here for people, and it's interesting. This is a lot of farmers and people living in rural Ireland. They understand what is good and not so good practice, and are quite willing to call it out, because of course it's bringing water quality down for everybody and risking all sorts of further legislation and more further enforcement. So if somebody does see something that they believe is not good practice or causing pollution, what can they do in that instance?
I presume now, Mark, you mean if they see it somewhere other than their own farm? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Well, in the first instance, they can go to the local authority and report, because especially if it's something, if it's a pollution potential incident, if it's something, a pipe going into a river or stream, something like that, and it seems to be causing problems or whatever the case may be. But if they're concerned about it, then the first port of call is the environment section of their local authority.
And is there an app for?
There's the See It Say It app. Yeah, the EPA See It Say It app. You can log your concern on that. So you can download that off of the usual app stores there. So it's called the See It Say It app.
You've presented a lot of the non-compliance information there at a national level. Is there a way of finding out what are the main issues at a regional level, or is that available to find out what are the most common areas of non-compliance at a specific county level?
At a county level, probably the best approach is to go to the local authorities. They are aware. They know what the non-compliance issues are in their own local areas, so that that information is available to them, and they would be the best to approach on that. I suppose I can probably say that broadly, it's what we have nationally is echoed mostly as well in the county council's own areas as well, so there's not much variance in that. But certainly if you are more curious about what is in your own county area, the local authorities would be the ones, again, that would have that information. All this information that we share back out, this is local authority information that's been provided to us. So that's where that information comes from, and they have it available to them.
A question in relation to that 43% figure there that you presented around non-compliance, given the amount of grant aid that has been available to farmers over a long period of time, very few farmers very few farmers are aware of these maps that are available, but are very interested when you show them. Why do you think do we still have those levels of non-compliance? And like you said, but a lot of it is down to management as well, rather than necessarily all having infrastructure investment required to address them.
Yeah. Well, that's true, Mark. Many of these things are down to management issues, which are, a lot easier to sort out than where you're going to require a significant investment for a tanker or something like that. But I suppose the high levels that we're seeing now are probably a product of the low numbers of inspections. Certainly, I think that were probably being carried out for the past number of years, that the water quality issue probably just went off the radar a bit when it came to your local streams and whatever. I don't think that the focus may not have been where it should have been. And also, it's probably not surprising that we're getting rates around, that high at the moment. It's unacceptable, and it's regrettable. We'd like to see it coming down, but it's probably not surprising, because when you ramp up an inspection system and you start carrying out more inspections, and you're carrying them out in areas where there's problems, you are more likely to find those problems, and that's probably reflected in those non-compliance rates that we're seeing now. But we are hopeful that those non-compliance rates will drop. They'll drop due to the inspection and enforcement activity, but more importantly to the awareness and to the supports that are out there for farmers now as well. Like, we know that farmers want to do the right thing. We know that they want good water quality. It's central to their livelihood as well. So I don't think, we're knocking on an open door here. I don't think there's a problem that way. So, it's the vast majority of farmers are in the same camp as all the rest of us. We all want good water quality.
Again, just looking at the actual day of inspection, if for whatever extenuating reasons a person may not be available to meet with the inspector, how does that work? And is it okay to have somebody there in their place, or accessing farm records, can they be supplied at a later time? Just a more of a practical question coming in there.
Yeah, look, if there's a problem on the day, if you're notified of an inspection, the details of the local authority will be there. Just make contact with them and just say, give your reasons for it. I mean, they will listen to that, and they will make alternative arrangements if it's appropriate to do so. So that option is there, definitely. That's not a problem.
Great. Question about what regulations would you like to see come in with a view to improving water quality? Do we have enough regulations there already? Is it just a case of compliance and enforcement at this point before we go any further?
Yeah, I think it's more about, at the moment, applying the regulations that are already there and getting them to work, before, maybe adding in more. But at the same time, it's always good to review the situation on the ground, and where need be, if new regulations need to be brought in, so be it. But during those reviews, I'm sure what you're looking at as well is the regulations that are in place. Are they working, and do they need tweaking or whatever? But certainly, I think the key here is to get the regulations that we currently have to work.
Question here around the time that the farmers have to respond to the initial findings of the inspection or the first inspection. What sort of time do farmers have to respond to get things sorted out?
Yeah, well, again, that's at the discretion of the local authority inspectors, and it really comes down to what they find on the ground and how serious the issue is. So if it's something fairly easy to fix, I'm sure, it could probably range from something like a month and to 2 months, 3 months. But it's based on what they find. And again, it's if the main thing is communication, is for the farmer to talk to the inspectors and say, listen, I'm working on this. I have it half done and I'm whatever, and listen, I can send you a photograph or something like that. And that saves anyone having to come back out in the meantime and be there. There's ways around that to I suppose, communicate that the work is being done. You mightn't have it finished, and I think local authority inspectors would welcome that, as well. So, don't be afraid to talk to the inspector. They will listen to what you have to say to them. And that's the main thing.
No, that's good advice, and not don't bury your head in the sand.
No,
it's not going to go away. Just a very, very practical question here at a farmyard level here. Is there a need to have gutters on every single shed, or how is that determined? Which sheds require gutters? If it's a small shed,
that's probably more of a Department of Agriculture kind of question, really, to be honest. I'm sure I would only be able to give my opinion from just being a rural chap, as the fella says, but I'm sure if there was a shed or something that was, discharging onto a hard area that was properly, what would you call it, leveled or inclined off into a gully or something like that, then maybe you don't have to. But I'd say that's more comes down to Department of Agriculture specifications and requirements there around ag buildings. Yeah.
Okay. And just one last question, Michael. The question is: are inspectors calling to farms to check the 4-day rule for slurry imported onto farms to verify the amount of slurry is actually applied? And can you explain how the inspectors are informed of slurry movements on their own on their on-farm inspection process for the 4-day rule?
The answer to the first question is yes. They are checking the 4-day movements. Sorry, and how are they being informed? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
How are they informed of the movements?
Yeah, that's a DAFM initiative, and DAFM and the River Basin Management Service are involved in that communication, and so they're being informed in a timely manner about these 4-day movements, so as they can. Now, again, it's probably, it depends as well on a number of factors as to whether the inspector is going to arrive out very quickly or otherwise, to inspect that. But it's suffice to say, yes, they are being monitored and they are being checked.
Okay. If I want to find out more about the guidance booklet and so forth, where is the best place to find that information out, Michael? Or is that available?
Yeah. If it's the guidance booklet, we can make it. We'll make it available if it's not already up there actually on the EPA website. So EPA.ie, And but again, I would just suggest to use Google in that case, because it'll bring you straight to the point. You just put in what you think you're looking for there. Again, the flag maps or anything like that, they're all on our EPA.ie or on the catchment's website. But again, my advice is to use Google. It'll just get you there quicker, rather than trying to go down to the menus and so forth on the website.
I've just posted a link there to the specific part of the EPA site on National Agriculture Inspection Program there. Yeah. So I'm sure you'll find that information in there. Michael, we're over time. Lots of interest in your presentation. So thanks again for taking the time to join us today. And no doubt we'll be hearing from you again. Maybe next year we'll get an update on how the 2026 inspections have been going, and no doubt there will be there's certainly the awareness. There's a huge amount of effort going into building the awareness amongst farmers and educating them around the various different actions and indeed the pressures that exist out at a farm level. So no doubt we'll be coming back to this topic again. So Michael, thanks again. Okay. So just to remind everyone that our last webinar before the summer break will be taking place next week, and we're going to be joined by Neil Folliard, who's a Welsh scholar with Teagasc, and he's going to be talking to us about the use of rapeseed cake to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's happening next Friday. So until then, enjoy the fine weather, still with us for another while. We might be having a different water type of conversation in a few weeks' time. Hopefully not in relation to the quantity of water across the country. But I note there is a hose ban across the entire country now at the moment. So everyone will need to observe that just to preserve those reserves that are across the country. So until next week, thanks again, and we will talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, the weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Don't forget to join us live every Friday morning for our latest webinar. For more, visit teagasc.ie. And you can also rate, review, and subscribe to the Signpost Series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Mark Gibson, and thanks for listening.